It's funny how it breaks the family and puts it in this delusional state, which I totally understand. It's the ultimate betrayal.
I'm very excited today to be speaking with Majid Alansari, the director, creator of The Vile. Majid, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. No, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Honestly, I loved this film. I thought this was one of the better thrillers I've seen this year, to be perfectly honest with you. It
Thank you.
was just fantastic across the board.
Thank you.
Where did it come from?
So it's a lot. The subject matter, which is polygamy, is something I grew up with, and something that I've seen as a kid. I always remember this moment when I was 7, 8 years old, and I was, in school, and my one of my good friends came to me and he's like, I think my father hates me. I'm like, why? And he's like, oh, he married a second wife, so I think he doesn't love us anymore. And that was my introduction to polygamy. I never knew about it. So as I was growing up, of course, like you see it in our culture, you see it in our environment, but it's not as prevalent as it was. You don't see it as much today as it used to be. And honestly, my film isn't about as an anti-polygamy. It's because if there's consent and there's a mutual understanding, that's something different than when, in our case, in our scenario, where Khalid walks in, there's no consent. He doesn't give her a choice, and he forces her into this polygamous relationship. And this also unfortunately happens from time to time in our community. And I really wanted to kind of point that out and talk about it in the movie. But it took me a long time. It took me 10 years of thinking about it. And then once I spoke to my mom and I had a deep dive conversation about polygamy with my mom, and she told me something very interesting. And that's when I knew I had the key, because I didn't want to disrespect the subject matter, but also wanted to make a horror. When she told me, she's like, I don't blame the man. I don't blame the first wife. I think the second wife did a spell on the man. And I'm sitting there, and she was serious. And I forgot that this part of our culture, we are superstitious, and we do believe in black magic and so on. So that was my key. That was my aha moment where I found an avenue where I could make this movie about this subject matter, but also use have it be a genre piece.
Yeah, it really is a unique way to tell the story. I mean, this isn't, not to
Yeah.
compare it to other films, but in some ways, when it started, I thought it was going to be more like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle or something
Right.
like that. It's this,
Yeah.
and we're going this way, and that I really think it's a
Thank you.
unique film with a unique spin. And
Thank you.
uh, now you said you're talking to your mom as sort of the way in for this. What was it like for you to explore polygamy in this way? Because like you said, this is something that it is accepted, and and not you're not criticizing it from in a
Yeah.
consensual relationship by any stretch. That's not in this film,
Yeah.
but we see an oppressive side to it as well.
Yes.
And so what was it like as you were exploring this issue in this way?
It was interesting because what we did, the first thing I did is set up. We did a lot of research and set up a lot of meetings. I knew it. I knew it from a family, but I wanted to really get into the deep dive into it. And the more I speak to family members, it could be a son, it could be a daughter, it could be a wife, that it's funny how it breaks the family and puts it in this delusional state, which I totally understand. It's the ultimate betrayal, right?
Hmm.
Um, and they do lose themselves. And I've spoken to people where 5 years later they're talking about their story, and they couldn't believe how they acted and reacted in the beginning, and it's traumatic, which I don't understand. And that, for me, I wanted to reflect that into the movie, and that piece of information really helped me structure and build some of the moments in the movie. And then a large part of it, I give a lot of credit to my actress Budur, who came into this knowing, like, she knows this culture, she knows this environment, and she really, really, like, there's a lot of moments I leaned on her. I'm like, as what do you feel here? What do you feel there? And she really filled in the gaps and made it true, because that's one thing I wanted to do with this movie, is make sure that it's as honest as possible. And a lot of the lines, like, there's a moment where when Amani is sitting in the car and Khalid's driving, and he's like, "Hey, you're lucky I didn't do it behind your back." I did, like that. That, for me, you hear that's some. And by the way, there was a huge debate on that line itself, in a sense where I'm sitting there, I'm like, hey, how would the Western or Eastern audience look at this? Like, I was so scared in the sense where I'm just looking at like a filmmaker that's just trying to make the man look bad. But but then I remember one of my Ben Ross, who's a producer on the movie, he came to me and he's like, no, you have to be honest. Like you can't shy away. And this is part of it. So a lot of the lines that was put in the movie where it came from real life instances, real life people that I've heard. Even there's another moment where Amani says to her sister, is like, hey, if you were me, what would you do? And she's like, did you see his face? Is it even worth it? He's fucking ugly, or something like, and that extent, right? And that attitude. And that was a real life conversation I had with two different women. And one was from a different generation than the other. Like one is younger, one is older. And the perspective, it was perspective change. And the UAE, and especially with what's happening with the UAE, I mean, women today are in high positions in government and private sector. They're sure women. So it's and I'm a father of two daughters. Like I can't. I'm happy. I'm so happy that my daughter are in this environment that they're in the UAE because the women empowerment movement and the push from the leadership is incredible. But still, of course, culturally you see those instances happen with the polygamy and so on. So yeah, so it's definitely a topic that hits close to home. And I wanted to be very, very close to home.
You know, just going back to that moment in the car, I mean,
Mm.
that hit different. And that was one of those moments where I actually was somewhat in shock because you could see he believes it. And it's just this character, you know, hey, you know what? Look, I could have cheated on you. It's like
Yes.
I could have cheated on you, but I brought you in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, whoa,
The
it's
delusion.
a gall of a comment like that. It's
Yes. And
um,
and you hear that, and you see some guys are like that, and because I've heard it, I've seen it, I've heard it multiple times, and it is, and I always say this with Khalid, and this is how I think of it. I always say the million-dollar question of this movie is that if he had a daughter, if Zara was pregnant and and it was a girl, not a boy, would he have brought in Zara into the household? Or would
mm,
he have kept it a secret? Because it clearly was a secret because she's like 3 4 months pregnant.
yeah.
So I think that's a million-dollar question. Like my belief, I don't think Khalid, just knowing Khalid and how I built him, I don't think he would bring her. So Amani would never know about Zahra.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and like without saying the ending, but the twist pays off. I think it all works, but you know, I you mentioned before about women and power, and I think that's an interesting place or conversation going on in this film because we see
Yeah.
it in a number of ways, whether
Mhm.
it's Amani
Right.
being challenged by
Mhm.
Khaled,
Mhm.
or if I'm saying that properly,
Yes, yes, you are.
um,
Yes.
and or Zara speaking with
Mhm.
Noor.
Mhm.
Saying, "Oh, you take a risk. So this is your chance. Take a powerful photo." You know, these sorts of
Right.
things.
Right.
But there is a power that is being given to the women in this film, and they're
Mhm.
not. Sometimes we see them; they're not sure whether they should take it.
Yeah. Yeah. Could be. Yeah. Possibly. Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Yeah. No. It's for me how I looked at like specifically Amani. It's she is powerful in a way, but she's fighting for the wrong things.
Mm,
And that's how I saw it. And it is based on a character that I knew in my life, and it's she is so like, which I understand the trauma, I understand it, but she was fighting for me. It was like she's fighting for the wrong things in the beginning, right? For the house, for the stature, for not being called in the environment in the community, and you hear this constantly in our community where I don't want to be living alone. I don't want to be. I have my independence because what would people say about me, right?
yeah, yeah, she
And
says
and,
it.
and and yeah, and she says that, and this is so she's fighting for the wrong thing. She's fighting for her pride. She's fighting, but what she's neglecting is her daughter. What's the main? That's the main prize. That's the family being put. If the husband is selfish and what is breaking the family up, and that's her journey, like right. Like, she's doing. If you look at it, she's doing a similar, not a similar thing, but she's in line with what Khalid is doing, where you're focusing on the wrong things, which I understand. Like I know that's traumatic, but I think that's the evolution of Amani in the movie is she realized in the end, okay, well, this is what's important, and this came from conversations that and I saw women, and this comes like it's a 5 years later, right? It's 10 years later, and they're reflecting back, and they said, I wish I just did that. I wish. And it
Mm.
all goes down to their kids and their family, and it's better than the reputation, the status, and the community, and so on and so forth. So and yeah.
So that was something that you heard from these conversations is
Yes.
women saying, "I wish I'd done it this way."
Yes, yes, yes,
Mm.
yes. And it's because it is heartfelt. The worst story, I don't want to really get it because it's I don't want to get into some of them, but because I think it's too personal, and I
Sure,
think they
of
want to
course.
keep it private. But yeah, no, there is it's funny how they a lot of one thing in common that I've had in all the research I've done and the women I've spoken to is the loss of identity and loss of oneself, and that's all the reflection back. You're talking about 5 years later. It's a reflection back. It's like I was put in a position which I totally understand. Like it's logical that you feel this way. They just experienced the ultimate betrayal, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, so one theme that was in common, or one idea that I saw in that is that they all just lost their personality for a certain amount of time. And that not only the wives, but that's also the kids. That's also the son and daughter. And that's part of the horror itself. I always say, I remember I pitched my mom the story, and she's like, "Oh, no, I don't care about your horror pieces. That what's happening there, that's the real horror. That's
Mm.
that's freaking. This is gonna freak a lot of people out in my region, and in a good way. Like it's a conversation starter, right? And that's what I wanted to do with this movie.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because yes, this is a film that has horror elements. You
Mm.
use a horror structure, but it's
Right.
the relationships that are the
Yes.
true horror within it. Um, and actually, you sort of mentioned it there as well about women, but also young women. And so we see Noor,
Mm.
Amani and Zara technically sort of dueling for
So right.
Noor.
Mm.
But this idea of passing that power on to the next generation
Mm.
was an interesting theme that sort of is in that film. It's sort of like
Right.
coaching her along. I thought that
Yes.
was interesting as well. Was that important to you to put in?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. It's within all that we needed a point where Amani realizes what's important. And for me, Noor's the battle for Noor. I always say like that the balance of where Noor stands and this is something that would be the ultimate loss for Amani for a person and I've and it's funny like when I speak to a lot of the women and they would mention that it's the kids are the ultimate like if they lose the kids that's the ultimate loss that's above everything and yeah and then of course Noor plays that character and I wanted that feeling to reflect and that relationship to reflect that yeah
Yeah, it comes across. It comes across absolutely. It, like I said, the film there's a fun aspect to it from the
right
thriller, but there's a
right
seriousness to it as well that
yeah
I
yeah
think
yeah
works so beautifully. Honestly, Majid, like what do you hope audiences take away from their time in the vial?
For me, honestly, it's a conversation starter. Like for the international audience, I'd say it's a window to explore some parts of our culture, and opinions. That this is an opinion not only mine, it's an opinion of the actors and the producers I've worked with, that we really believe in. It's something very extremely cultural, that's rarely talked about. And honestly, it's also that even though as serious as the subject matter is, it's also fun. Like it has this edge of your seat kind of rhythm to it, and it is that film where I hope that you are enjoying it as you're watching, but then leave the theater and have a conversation about it. That's the ultimate goal for me.
Yeah, that I think that horror element makes it accessible for anybody.
Yes. Yeah.
And so do the relationships. Like it really
Yes.
does. Even if there are moments where you're going, hold on.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
it is an accessible and just a fun and serious piece at the same time.
Yeah.
It really is great,
Oh, thank
honestly.
you. Yeah, yeah. That's a compliment. Thank you.
Honestly, Majid, I really appreciate the time to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The film is great, and I wish you the best at the festival and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Nice speaking to you.
Absolutely. Nice speaking to you too.